Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cherry the Geek TV. I'm Joe Vanourney. Today we are joined by Bernardo Britto, who is the writer, director of Omni Loop, which is opening in theaters and on video on demand September 20th from Magnolia Pictures. Bernardo, welcome to Cherry the Geek TV.
It's very nice to be here. I'm loving the shelf. I'm loving I'm gonna give a shout out to Army of Darkness. That's my favorite thing from the shelf.
Awesome, awesome. Before we start, give people an overall sense of Omni Loop. What is the story? On the surface, it's a time travel, time loop film, but there's a lot more to it than that. How do you describe the film when you're describing it to people?
No, you're making it hard. How do I describe the movie? I describe it as a woman with a black hole decides to try time travel. It's about this character, Zoya Lowe. She's got this black hole in her chest, and in 5 days she'll be dead. And she has these pills that she's had since she was a little girl that allow her to go back in time 5 days at a time. In fact, it's these pills that have given her this black hole. She's taken them so many times that she's now here at the end of her life. And so she just keeps reliving these last 5 days. And so it starts off from this kind of high concept sci-fi conceit, but then that allows us to talk about things like life and death and time and memory and regret and the uncertainty of the future and, the nostalgia of our past and all the things that kind of make up being a person in the world. So yeah, I think I did pretty good with that one.
That's a good description.
Proud
Talk
of
about the genesis of the film. How did you come up with the idea? What were the inspirations behind writing it?
it. I found the idea online. No, I just it came from a lot of personal things. It being close to someone who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and just dealing with death and things like that. And then I just remember always having those ideas for a black hole in someone's chest, time travel pills, all these kind of different things. And then I was sitting one day in Miami on the Metro Mover riding the Omni Loop, which is the loop that the one of the loops that the Metro Mover does. And it just kind of all came together sitting there going around in a circle in downtown Miami and thinking about life. So yeah, I remember that exact moment sitting there on that train and being like, oh, I think this is the movie. And then it was a long time writing it.
Now, when you're developing something like this with a sci-fi element, especially a time travel, time loop element to it, you run the risk of the film getting away from you, right? Sometimes it can get convoluted, too technical. Did that happen to you in the writing process? And what did you do to center the film? Pull the film back, keep it centered and grounded.
Yeah.
Kind of walk me through that process.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a risk. I think the best guard against that is to just surround yourself with people that you trust. So my producer, Ben Cohen, who I've made all my movies with, who's also a very smart, thoughtful person with really good taste and whose film taste I trust. I would show him every single draft of everything I wrote, and he would be like, "Why are they going to Japan to go to this thing now? Like, what are you doing?" And so that was always like whenever I would like go too far, he would be like, "No, no, 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 no. What what's going on here? Like, let's refocus this." And yeah, I think you try to find that the first couple of drafts, you're trying to get as much of the world building and exposition across without weighing down all the story, and you're trying to make sure you answer all the questions. People are always like, but but if she does this and then that, and so you're trying to get all of those little questions out of the way and make it so it doesn't get in the way of people enjoying the movie. But yeah, the real answer is just like showing drafts to people you trust and letting them sort of just stepping outside of your head for a second and being like, oh, right, maybe people don't care about the sci-fi mumbo jumbo stuff as much as I do. And then sometimes people would be like, we want more sci-fi mumbo jumbo. And I'd be like, I don't know. I don't know if we need more of it.
How long did it take to write the film?
The it was I started writing in 2016. We shot in 2022. So that's 6 years. That's not every day writing it, but yeah, it took 6 years to get it to that sort of shooting script phase. That's just a lot of living life and rewriting drafts.
Now, there have been a lot of other time loop films. Groundhog Day is probably the most popular one that people would know.
The best one, you
Time
gotta say.
Time Crimes. What's the challenge when you're doing a time loop film of when you have to tell, go back, you're going back a week and reliving that week again, and you're adding little tweaks to it to show that there's, something different going on here. What are the challenges in making it fresh and different from those things that people maybe have seen before?
It's funny because in the script phase and in the editing phase too, like all these things that you think you're like, well, I don't want to do this thing where you kind of like gamify it and they're like, oh, I learned the thing, so now I can go back and fix it or whatever. You're like, well, I don't want to do that. And then when you get to the edit phase, people like love all of that stuff. And you're like, oh, okay. So there's a reason why these movies are popular. Yeah, I always try to subvert it in interesting ways. I think the most interesting ways that we do subvert it is that we start the movie already in the loop. Also, the fact that it's a loop that she's creating for herself, that it's a choice that she makes every time. For me, that feels like an emotionally interesting choice rather than being just stuck in a situation. It's a situation she's putting herself in, and I always prefer that. I love a movie without a clear antagonist, where it's just like, no, we're maybe the problem here. And so yeah, it's a little things like that, and then you also don't want to completely neglect the fun of it. So having things happen where it's like a character is already aware of it. But yeah, I also wanted this middle section of the movie where we feel fully disconnected from time and space, where we don't know how long it has been. And it's really interesting. I think film is such a fascinating medium because the way it works with time, like you think you'll need more to show, but you really don't. And if I told you the amount of times she actually takes a pill and disappears, you would be shocked at how few times she actually does it in the movie because in your mind it feels like she does it, 8 billion times. She's always doing it. I know because I edited the movie. It's very, very few times. Yeah.
Let's talk about your amazing two leading ladies. We'll start with Mary-Louise Parker, who plays Zoya. Talk about her. What qualities does she bring to the film that made you say, yes, this is my Zoya?
Um, I'd seen her on stage in a couple plays. The Sound Inside, she's incredible, and she won a Tony for that. And I loved her in Angels in America. And I just thought she has this real intensity to her, but she also has a very grounded. She's able to just, I don't know, she really feels like a real full real person while still being very, you know, acting is not just about being like normal on screen. You also have this like extra characteristic to it that feels larger than life while still feeling real. And she's able to do that. She has a great sense of humor mixed with, her kind of intensity and gravitas. And I just thought that would be perfect for the part. I'd also had read her book, Dear Mr. You, which is a really well written and just incredible. And I just thought on an emotional level, she would understand the movie. Um, and yeah, it was great working with her. It was fun collaborating with her and trusting her with the character. It was like, oh, it's in great hands because believe it or not, she actually knows more about being a mother in her 50s than I do. So it was good to
And Ayo Edebiri, the people know from The Bear, Emmy Award nominee, Golden Globe winner, plays
ag.
Paula.
Yeah, yeah.
Talk about her casting and what quality she brought to the role that are great.
Ayo, I talked about that character as being someone that moved through the world with the confidence of youth, where she really just kind of like was just had that energy where she's just kind of like go 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 go. I'm gonna do this all this kind of stuff. That I feel like even I've already sort of like started to lose. Where I'm like, oh, I don't know if need to do that. And I think Io has that spark. She has that charisma. I think she plays well with opposite Mary-Louise. That was always so exciting to me. Was thinking about the two of them together. Um, and she has a great physicality to her. I think um it's in her reactions, it's in her facial expressions, but it's also just in the sort of subtle things that she does where she really inhabits the character. She's not just reading lines off a page, she's really kind of in it. And I was such a fan of hers from her comedy work. And then when I saw her, we shot with her shortly after the first season of The Bear, and I remember watching that and being like, it's this person that has been your secret that you've loved for so long, and now you get to like see the whole world discover her, and you're like, yeah, of course she's going to be the biggest person in the world because she's been incredibly talented for so long now. Yeah.
Now, she and Mary-Louise both have writing backgrounds as well. Mary-Louise wrote the book. Ayo's written some stuff as well. Are there moments on in the film that they brought that weren't on the page, like when you're visualizing a scene or a moment in your head, and then you film it? Can you give me like a specific example of something they did that was like, oh, that's.
There was so many moments. I mean, I really there were so many things. I think with Mary-Louise, she was always very good about. I think I overwrite, and maybe even in some of these answers, you can see that I'll over communicate and I'll repeat myself a bunch. Like I just did just now, I repeated myself 3 times. And so Mary-Louise was always very good at being like, you don't need this line, you don't need this line, and cutting things like that. She was also really good at deepening the relationship between her husband in the movie, Carlos Jaycott, and really making that feel real in a way that I think on the page it wasn't the focus of it. Um, and I think similarly with Ayo, I mean, Ayo is so funny. Every joke that she can improv will be better than anything I will come up with. But they were both really, really great, really collaborative writers. And I remember getting a phone call from them after a long day of shooting, and it was like midnight or something, and they were both like in Mary-Louise's hotel room, like reworking the script and being like, we think for this scene that like this should happen instead. And I remember being so tired of being like, what? And they were usually always right. I would say 95% of the time, their suggestions and their contributions made it into the movie. They're incredible to work with. I feel a little guilty that I get so much credit for things that they brought to it.
Well, we are sadly almost out of time. Before we wrap up, I have a final question. You said at the beginning that you kind of developed the film trying to answer the questions: the meaning of death, the meaning of life, the meaning of time. What does all of that mean? You spent 6 years working on the script, shooting the film. Now that it's out, now that you have a final product, did you get those questions answered? Are those unsolvable questions?
I'll be very sincere, very honest with you right now. I thought I had. I thought I had really reached a point where I was like, oh, I feel some closure with this. I feel you know, some catharsis with my feelings about death and all that stuff. And then something happened earlier this year, another sort of tragedy, and then you just go right back into it, and you're like, I thought I had figured this out, but it never can. I think the permanence of death is just an impossible thing. So yeah, just a question that you keep asking. And as Camus said, sometimes you find meaning in asking the question and pushing the boulder up the hill. So sometimes you just have to make do with the fact that those answers are elusive.
Well, people can see the questions, see the answers in Omni Loop, coming to theaters and digital September 20th. Bernardo, thanks so much for chatting with us today on Cherry the Geek TV.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Do you want to hear a secret?
Sure.
I've done this before. Tomorrow night, I take a pill and I go back a week.
Back.
I'm right back to the hospital.
She has a black hole growing inside of her body.
How much longer does she have?
I'd say maybe another week. I'm sorry. They're watching the game.
This has all happened before. So many times before. Your name is Paula Campos. You work in a lab. I'm from the future. I know everything that's gonna happen.
How many fingers am I holding up?
3. Now the middle finger. Now your cat's gonna meow. And you're gonna ask me, is this really happening right now? And I'm gonna say, yes, it is. I wanna make it so I don't only have 5 days left. I have my whole life.
I think I know somebody who can help us. An anescopic man. Let's solve time travel. Are you gonna be okay?
They'll be fine. We've tried everything. And still, I can't do it.
Do you think there's an alternate timeline where I do go on, where I don't die of a black hole in my chest?
I know there's things I could change. I don't want to risk losing this moment with you.
Everything I could have done, all the other versions of me.
ever thought about what it's like when you disappear?
What about you? What would you want?
More days.